Good morning from New York, Aline.
Yes, antibiotics has been one of the major issues discussed in the meeting. Why is it so important?
Well, we rely on antibiotics to treat pretty much everything from a throat infection to life-threatening diseases. But public health organizations, including the World Health Organization, warn that our life-saving antibiotics could stop working if we continue to overuse them. And so the rise of the so-called superbugs or superbacteria that are resistant to antibiotic treatment and the threat that they pose to modern medicine and also to the lives of people around the world as well as the economy has been recognized or will be recognized in a few hours in a pledge to be signed by officials from 193 countries at the UNGA today, including Indonesia, where we know this is a very serious and prevalent problem because we can find antibiotics pretty much anywhere. You know, you can go to a local pharmacy and get it without prescription. You can go to a corner store to get it. It's also very widely used in farms and fisheries, not just in Indonesia, but also around the world. And this is a very concerning issue that the world leaders are addressing here in New York today. Also ahead of this signing, 13 leading pharmaceutical companies worldwide, including Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline, and Merck, signed the declaration, and the pharmaceutical groups plan to work with experts to alter factory supply chains and standards to ensure that antibiotics do not enter waterways and leading to the breeding of these superbugs. And the countries and also the other actors involved also agreed to raise awareness on the overuse of antibiotics for humans as well as livestock. Aline.
Tension between the U.S. and Russia has been escalating after a convoy was attacked in Syria. Now, how does this affect the meeting?
This is certainly one of the issues that continues to suck every kind of diplomatic resources here in the UN. And, you know, I was here last year, and it was exactly the same thing. Everything was sucked into this U.S.-Russia tension over Syria. And we know that the U.S., the White House spokesperson, Josh Earnest, said that Russia was probably responsible for the deadly bombing of the UN convoy in Syria. And this, of course, further weakened the agreement, the fragile ceasefire between the U.S. and Russia that is aimed to stop the war in Syria. So as of today, the UN officials suspended all 8 convoys in Syria, describing the bombing as a possible war crime as well as a cowardly act. And this suspension was announced just as the UN General Assembly was, convening to discuss this very issue, where the 5-year-old war in Syria has become one of the most anguished and, heartbreaking conflicts of our generation.
So, Patsy, President Barack Obama also called for wealthy nations to bring more efforts in tackling the refugee issues. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so in this summit that's hosted by President Obama as well as 5 other countries, what they did was they guarded pledges from about dozens of countries to resettle and allow the admission of about 360,000 refugees, doubling the number of slots that were available last year. But again, this is only a fraction of what is needed because according to the UN Refugee Agency, about 1.2 million refugees need to be resettled. And, the pledge that the U.S. gave as well, 10,000 slots for Syrian refugees, that's only a drop in the bucket. And, certainly nothing compared to what Germany has pledged up to 1 million refugees. And as we understand, the political climate here in the U.S. is also not very conducive to that. We have people like Donald Trump saying that, if he becomes president, all resettlement of refugees will be halted. No more refugees, no more immigrants coming in from Russia, from Muslim countries. So these are all issues of a big concern at world leaders here at the UN, whether or not this agenda will continue when the change of leadership happen in the U.S. On the refugee issue, one thing also that's quite notable is George Clooney, Hollywood actor, and his wife Amal Clooney, international lawyer and human rights activist, joined the leadership of several governments as well as more than 50 U.S. companies in pledging to do more to stem the international refugee crisis. And these 51 companies has pledged to raise more than $650 million in refugee aid. But again, all these efforts are commendable, but yet certainly not enough to alleviate the plight of the refugees.
Very well. Patsy Widakuswara from VOA in the United States. Thank you so much. Now, moving on, products optimism in the face of falling sales may finally be feeding through to the share price.
Yes, Italian luxury goods makers stayed positive even while reporting a 15% drop in the first half revenue last month.